evening class to take a quick look at my code for the
Sure.
Which one works better for you, after this class or after the evening class?
After the evening class.
Okay. Evening class to
Yeah, so ping me after at 9.
okay.
We can jump in and in the
Oh, at night is
my class
9
goes
o'clock.
at 7:30 to 9.
Sorry?
My class at night it's 7:30 to 9.
Okay. But the homework is also due at 9 o'clock.
Midnight.
Oh, midnight? Oh, I see. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Oh yeah, 9 o'clock Pacific time, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Or maybe I can stay longer after the first class, after the evening class.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's see. Start the stream. Let me share my screen. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay, let me bring up the chat.
Also, homework 4 says it's still due 2 days ago, but just thought I'd let you know.
Right, yes, right, it's due tonight. Yeah, I didn't change the dates. I didn't change the dates. All right, let's see. Let's give everybody a couple more minutes to join. Let's get started. All right, so just to recap on the changes, a couple of changes in the dates. Right, we had moved the assignment that was due on Monday. We moved it over to tonight because of there were some issues with the server. Just wanted to give you a couple more days to compensate for some of the challenges you might have faced. So yeah, so it's due tonight at midnight. Also, the same thing with the midterm. We moved it from today. We moved it over to the end of the week, so that you're going to have over the weekend to work on the midterm. And it'll be available, I believe, Friday, sometime Friday, all the way to Monday the following week. So next Monday at midnight. Also with the schedule, right? We have been talking quite a bit about implementing front ends with React.js. We're going to keep doing that for the remainder of the semester. So lots and lots more React.js. So give you a lot of chances to practice and get confident with the technology. So yeah, so a lot of more React.js, a lot of more Redux. Right, we're going to get a chance to play around with Redux yet again in this upcoming assignment. So everything you've been practicing with Redux for the modules and the lessons and the topics, you get a chance to practice it again with widgets. Okay, the focus of the upcoming assignment is implementing your own RESTful API. So you've been using my RESTful APIs, right? Which is a server that allows you to post, get, delete, put data onto a remote server. And it is a server that I host, right? And there's hundreds of you that are hitting the same server simultaneously, and with some syntax errors, and folks are getting into these infinite loops where they're bombarding the server with lots and lots of requests, and yes, it does crash once in a while. But yeah, so what we're going to do is that we're going to augment that so that you're going to have your own server, right? That is going to host your own data connected to your own database. Right? For this first assignment, which is the RESTful assignment number 5. We already talked about it on Monday. We introduced the assignment. Today, we're going to get into much more details. And the focus of it is to implement your own server, your own data source. We won't connect it to a database just yet, not in this assignment. We'll do that in the next assignment. But this assignment will focus on exposing data models, right, through a RESTful API. Okay. So let's take a look at the assignment. Let's go over it one more time, and we'll get started. We'll get started on it. So let's see. We are A5 REST. Right, so as I mentioned earlier, we are going to implement our own RESTful API to be able to store and retrieve widgets. Okay, and a widget is just going to be an object, right, implemented in a Java class called Widget.java. And very much like any other object you might want to store remotely somewhere in some database, right? For instance, you've been using up to this point, you've been using courses, modules, lessons, topics. So those are being stored somewhere, right? So there's some data model that represents the data structure of all the attributes that a course or a module or a lesson or a topic, right? They all have titles and other fields, right? So same thing here. Widget is going to represent a record, right, that is going to be stored in some database at some point. Right now, we're not going to connect it to a database. It's just going to be stored in memory, in the server's memory. At some point, in the coming week, we are going to store it permanently in a relational database, but not yet, right? Right now, it's just going to live in the memory of the server, because we're going to learn about how to make this data available through the API. Okay. So this is widget.java, and we are going to be able to store. We're going to use a widget service, which is responsible for managing the life cycle of these widgets, keeping track of all these widgets. Right now, it's going to use the in-memory storage to be able to create new widgets, delete widgets, update widgets, and whatnot, but all in memory. At some point, we're going to map this to a database. We don't have that just yet. Right now, it's just into a local array of widgets. And we're going to make them available to the client through a controller, which is going to define URLs, right? That then our React client is going to be able to hit these. It's going to be able to hit these URLs to retrieve the widgets, right? To create new widgets, to update widgets, delete widgets, right? So just like you're doing right now, hitting the generic server, posting, deleting, getting, putting, right, into the generic server, you're going to be doing the same thing, posting, getting, putting, deleting, but with your server, okay? And these are the URLs. If you remember, whenever we are posting or retrieving data that has a one-to-many relationship with other data, right? Like for instance, courses have a one-to-many with modules. Modules has a one-to-many with lessons, right? One lesson has many topics. So whenever we want to create, right, that relationship, we typically the pattern or the template for those URLs are the parent, the ID of the parent followed by the child, right? And so this post creates a widget inside of a topic, right? This get retrieves all the widgets for a given topic, right? Just like we did for courses, modules, and lessons and topics, right? Whenever we are manipulating an individual object, like updating an individual object or removing an individual object, we can just use the name of the thing that we are updating or the thing that we're deleting without the need of the context of their parents, okay? So yeah, so we're going to implement those. Once we have that on the server up and running and we have access to the data and whatnot, right, we need to focus on the client side on rendering. And that's just more React.js, more Redux, which you already know, right? So this second part of the assignment, which is the creating a widget service, this is basically the same thing you've done already for module service, for lesson service, for topic service, for course service. You've done this already, right? So this one is almost a verbatim copy and paste from one of your existing module servers, lesson servers. It's almost identical. The only difference is that you're going to change, instead of lesson, it'll be widget. Instead of lesson, right, with lessons, it'll be widgets, right? So this one's almost, we gave it to you already, right? Then the widget list is very similar to the module list, to the lesson lists, right? To lesson tabs and the topic pills, right? Which iterate over an array, right? And then render them. The modules render them from the left-hand side as a list, right? The tabs render them as tabs horizontally, and the pills also horizontally. The widget list is going to render also vertically, just like the module list is going to render vertically, right? But instead of all the modules looking the same, right? The modules all look the same, right? Here, the challenge is that the widgets actually look different depending on the type of the widget, right? If it's a heading widget, it's going to render as a heading. If it's a paragraph widget, it'll render as a paragraph. So it's slightly different, right? So it's a little more challenging, but not that much more challenging, okay? All right, so let's focus first on the real topic for this week, right? Of creating a RESTful API, okay? Let's see, there's a question on the chat. It says, do the widgets need to be responsive? No, the widgets don't need to be responsive. Okay, so we're going to start on the server side, right? On the server side, let's see. Here's our React client that we've been using for the last couple of weeks, right? But we need to grab the Java server that we had started about a month ago or so, right? So let's go get it, and let's see. This is Java, I think. It's this one. Yeah, for some reason I said 03. I don't know. It's section 1. So it's this one right here. So this is the same Java project that we had played around with a while back, and we kind of had abandoned this, right? If we run this, let's see what we have so far. Let's run this. And let's, I think this is listening at port 80. Let's say localhost 80. Right, this is what we had played around with, right? The login screen, the profile. Okay, so right now we've been using this server only for hosting static data. I'm sorry, static content, right? Login and so on and so forth, right? So what we're going to be what we want to be able to do is not only host static content, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? We want to host also dynamic data, right? And we need to be able to distinguish between one and the other, right? Creating dynamic data is very, very simple. Inside of your Java, right, there is a package, a default package. This is the default package. This demo application is where the server is implemented, right? This is the entry point of the server. When you run, right, this as a server, right, you're basically executing that demo application, which has a main. See that? Has a main. So this is the entry point of our Java server. Right? So at that package, right, that same level, the inside of that package, this is where we're going to be doing all our work. It's very important that you do it under this package. Okay. If you do it inside of this package, a lot of magic happens, right? If you do it outside of this package, then there's a lot more configuration that you need to do, right? So it'll be much easier if you just do it under this package. A lot of things are already pre-configured if you do it under that particular package, right? So one of the things that we're going to do here is that we're going to create a couple of folders, right? We're going to create another package under here, and we'll call it models. Here's where we're going to put all our data that we want to store in a database, right? Everything that is going to hold data, right? We're going to put widgets in there. If we would have had, if we would be storing topics and lessons and courses ourselves in our database, then here you would also put courses, modules, lessons, topics would live here. But because you're using a different server, using my server, you don't need to, right? Because it's someone else is doing that, right? I'm doing it, okay? But here, because we are storing widgets, we're going to put widgets in here. Later on, when we do quizzes and questions within quizzes and whatnot, this is where we're going to be putting it, okay? Okay, so let's create the data model for this. So here we're going to create a Java class, and we're going to call it widget. Okay, so here's widget. In here, we're going to have a couple of fields that we might want to store in the database, right? So in particular, we want at least the field for our primary key if we're going to store it in the database, right? So we'll have a private, all fields should be private, right? So we have private, integer, and then we'll have ID. Notice that it's ID, no underscore ID, right? The underscore ID that we've been using so far for lessons and topics and courses has been underscore ID because we are storing this in a Mongo database, okay? And Mongo database by default uses the underscore and the primary key ID, right? That's the default name, right? So we're following the naming convention for MongoDB. Here, we're gonna be using a relational database to store all this in a MySQL database, right? And in there, I mean, you could use underscore, but I wanna follow, proper naming conventions, and I'll just use it, just use the name ID, right, without underscore. All right, so we have the widget. We're also going to have here the type of the widget, and we're going to use a string for that. So there's going to be type, right? And there's tons and tons of other fields in here. In particular, if this is a heading widget, right, we'll want to have the size of the widget. So we'll say integer size of the widget. We'll also need to know maybe the text of the widget, like the label, right? Or if it's a paragraph, you'll have text in there as well, right? So we can store it maybe in different fields. It's up to you, but we could say maybe put the text here, right? This is for the paragraph text, or if you want to, if you want to use a different field for the heading and call it label, maybe that would be appropriate, or we can agree that we're going to just use text. Okay, I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm just going to say text. Right? There's tons of other fields in here that we ask you to implement in the assignment. Go ahead and implement all the fields that I suggest here. You're not going to necessarily use all of them or them, but it's a good idea to go ahead and add them. Okay. All right. So I'm not going to go and add them all just for time's sake, and I'm going to also add here the setters and getters that are going to allow us to manipulate the data in this object. All right. So we're going to say code, and we're going to generate the setters and getters. There we go. All of them. And probably for convenience purposes, we're also going to add a constructor. So we'll generate also a constructor. Let's say constructor. And we'll select all of them. Oops, I'm sorry. That was the no argument constructor, which we'll need anyway. But let's create here an all arguments constructor. Constructor. We'll select all of them and say OK. There we go. So we have a constructor that can instantiate all these widgets. We're not going to need this later on when we use the database, right? But because we don't yet have the database, right? We do need them for now. Okay. All right. Excellent. So let's we have that. Let's leave it like this for a while. We'll come back to this, and we'll need to refactor a little bit later on when we actually do connect it to the database, right? We'll need to do a few different things next week, right? For the next assignment. But for our assignment, this is plenty. Okay, so we're now going to create another class which is going to be responsible for managing the life cycle of these widgets. Right, somebody's going to have to maintain a list, an array of these widgets. Right, eventually this will go to a database, but we don't have that yet. So for now, we're just going to use a simple array as our database. Okay, so we'll do that in another package. So we'll create another package. We'll call this services. Right, so services are just like models have the role of maintaining data, right? Services are going to have the role of actually creating the data, updating the data, or manipulating the data in general, right? So this eventually is going to talk to the database, right? To insert, to delete, to update records in the database, but for now, it's going to just use a plain old array, right? So let's create here a Java class, right? And this will be the widget service. Okay, so this widget service is going to implement all the CRUD operations of manipulating all our widgets, right? Now let's start with a with a simple list of widgets here, which is the widget that we're going to, the list of widgets that we're going to be manipulating, right? So this is going to be, let's say, private list of widgets, right? And these are, we'll call them widgets, right? And I'm going to say new array list of widgets. Okay. Wait. There we go. All right, so we have a list of widgets. We can initialize this in a static block. We can say that when this gets instantiated, we can initialize these by creating several widgets here, right? So let's create a couple widgets in here. So we'll say widget 1, say new widget, and let's provide a couple of data here. So we'll have the ID. What else we have for the widget? The type. So we'll say that this is a heading widget. It has a size, so maybe a heading of size 1, and the text says welcome to widgets. Okay, there we go. So we have our first widget represented as an object. Okay, let's just implement a couple more. So this is widget number 2, widget number 3, 4, and this is maybe just a couple of widgets. This one's a heading, maybe this one's a paragraph. Okay. There is no size, so it's just going to be ignored, right? And so here, this is this is a paragraph. Okay. And maybe another heading widget of size, maybe a smaller size, and this is welcome to web dev. Okay, and here might be a paragraph, lodem ipsum, with some long paragraph. This is also a paragraph. All right, so we got 4 widgets. Perfect. Let's add them to the array of widgets. Okay, so widgets, we're going to add widget 1. Oops, cancel. Okay, so here's widget 1. And let's just add all 4 widgets, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so we got all widgets. So if we're in the next assignment, we're going to replace this, right? So that instead of maintaining the data here in an array, right, these will be records in a database, right? But again, we don't have a database just yet, right? We'll have that next week. For now, our database is just this array of widgets. Okay. All right. Excellent. So as a service, right, the responsibility of a service is to maintain the life cycle of this, right? Create, implement all the CRUD operations that allow me to add, remove, update, delete, retrieve my data structures. Okay. So basically implement all the CRUD operations. So we're going to implement CRUD operations. Okay. Right. And so, okay, so let's do that. So let's do public. We're going to we want to create a widget, right? So widget create widget, right? And presumably we are going to give you an object of widget, and we're going to insert it into the database, presumably. Right, and the database is going to create a primary key for it. We don't have that, so let's do it ourselves. We're going to say we can say integer ID is equal to a new date. Let's see, date import class IAM. util. And can we get the time? Okay, it's a long number. This is long. And we can say we can initialize the ID we can set the ID to be this ID. Right. Notice that it's set it to long. I guess we can cast it to an integer. We can cast it to an integer, so it'll truncate it if it doesn't fit, right? So we're gonna cast it to an integer. Can we cast it? No, we can't cast it. Can I cast it here? I guess I could change the I can change the ID to be a long. It's actually a better choice to make this long, 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 and long. There we go. Okay, so we create the widget, we save it to this to a database, which in this case is adding it to this array. So we'll say widgets, widgets.add, and we'll add the widget, the brand new widget, and we're going to return the widget, which is gonna you know, we're simulating that we have stored it in the database. The database has created a primary key for us, which right now we're using the time, right, the number of milliseconds, right, and then we're just returning the same object that that we just stored in the database, right. We also want to be able to retrieve all the widgets, right? So we can say public and retrieve all the widgets, right? We can say, you know, find all widgets. And this will return just the widgets array. Okay. We also maybe want to return an individual widget, right? We say find widget by ID. So if we pass you a long ID, we can find that widget and retrieve it, right? We can do something like you know, for widget in widgets. In widgets, right? Oops, widgets. There we go. Right, we can check to see, right, if widget.get ID, you know, equals the widget, the ID that we sent you, right? Then we can just return the widget, the widget that we found, right? Otherwise, at the end, we're just going to return null. Okay. What else? What else could we do? Well, let's leave it at this for now. Okay. Other things that we might want to do here is update, right? We can say maybe integer, you know, update widget, and we pass in the widget ID as a long, right? And we update. Right now, we're just going to return -1, and then we might want to remove. We say public, right? You know, integer, you know, delete widget, and the ID of the widget that we want to remove. So for now, we're just going to return -1. Okay, so basically all the CRUD operations that manipulate your data structure. Make sense? Again, next week we'll replace these to go to a database. All right, so what we want to be able to do here is that we want to make this available, all these operations, we want them to make them available to a React client, right? The React client needs to be able to invoke all these operations, right? Notice that the widget service is completely unaware of who's going to use this, right? And that's a best practice, right? The service should be agnostic, right, of who the client, who's going to be using this, right? So it should be like that, right? So instead, we're going to create a different we're going to create a different file, which is going to be responsible for using this this service, right? And then making it available to clients outside. Okay. Let's see, widget client. Is it? Oh, okay. This is supposed to be long. There we go. All right, excellent. So let's create now, right, in a separate package, right? We're going to create another package. We're going to say controller. So controllers, here we're going to put Java classes that are responsible for exposing behaviors and data to the rest of the world through an HTTP API. Okay, we're going to implement it using RESTful conventions, right? But a controller in general, that's what it does, right? It makes functions and data and behavior available to the rest of the world through an HTTP interface, right? So let's create the let's create the widget controller, right? So the widget controller, right? Basically, the widget controller, we want to be able to make data available to the rest of the world. Okay? In particular, we want to, if we are the widget controller, we want to make available, say, all the widgets, or create a widget or delete a widget, right? Through a RESTful, React client. Okay. So how do we do that? So the way we do that, right, is that we are going to basically we want to be able to do the following, right? If you say public list widget, right, you find all widgets. Okay, and let's import these two. Basically, the controller is not responsible for keeping hold of the data. Instead, it knows who has the data. Who has the data? The service has the data, right? So the widget service, right, new widget service, okay, has the data. So it can delegate. You can delegate and say, oh, well, I don't have the data finding all the widgets. The service does. So I'm just going to return what the service returns, right? And the idea is that I like to be able to make this function available to the rest of the world, so that somebody can, like a React client, can send a GET request and retrieve all this data. Okay. So the way we do that is fairly easy. What we do is that we annotate this as a REST controller. See that? That's it. We annotate it as a REST controller. And again, controller meaning that it's we're going to expose this as an HTTP set of APIs of URLs. REST is that we want to follow a certain naming convention and how we structure those HTTP URLs, right? So for instance, one of the things that we're going to follow, right, is that when we read data, right, when a client is reading data, we're going to use the HTTP GET request, right, meaning that this is going to be a GET mapping, right? We're going to map this function to a URL that is going to, the server is going to receive as an input, as a GET request, right, mapped to a URL here, right, and then it'll execute this function, right? So this URL could really be anything, right? It could be anything you want at all, right? But we're not just going to put anything here, right? We're going to follow certain standards, certain industry standards that folks have, evolved and accepted over the years, right? And they have come to be referred to as RESTful APIs, right? RESTful web services, right? And they follow a certain convention, okay? One of the conventions is that we prepend our URLs with some kind of token, right, that gives a hint that this is a data source, some kind of data source, right, and to be distinguished from static content like HTML, JavaScript, CSS, right? This is not content that is meant for rendering, right? It's not HTML, it's not CSS. No human being is supposed to look at this, right? It is strictly for data transfer, right, between some client and some server. So a very common token to distinguish between one and the other is /API. Another common one is REST, so /REST. Another one is /data, right? So those are conventions. Nobody's forcing you to do any of this, right? It's a convention that folks in the industry have evolved over time. When you put a URL into a web browser, is that a RESTful GET or something else entirely? When you put a URL, so when you put a URL into the web browser, you are generating an HTTP GET request, okay? But it's not RESTful, right? REST is strictly for data access, right? That you're posting to create new data, you are getting to retrieve data, you're deleting, right, to delete data. So it's all data related, right? All the GET requests that we've been, whenever you go to any website, right? These are all GETs. These are all GETs, and you're getting not data, right? You're getting, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? You're not getting any data. The JavaScript that gets downloaded, eventually might generate RESTful APIs, right? Calls, right, to retrieve data, right? Like most single-page applications, that's what happens, right? The first call is you download HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then subsequent queries, right, might be RESTful, retrieving data. Okay. All right, so let's keep going with the convention. So the next convention is that if you are retrieving data, right, this next should be a noun. A noun, right, a plural noun, right, that describes what it is that you're retrieving. So what are we retrieving? We're retrieving widgets. Okay, we are retrieving widgets. Okay, that's it. Up to that point, when you are, since the name of the function says find all widgets, meaning we're not specifying any specific widget, then that's it. This is all we need, /widgets. Right? If instead we want a specific widget, then we would continue here with something that would uniquely identify that particular widget, right? But right now we just want all widgets. Okay, there we go. All right, we're gonna do one more thing. This service here, we're not going to instantiate it ourselves, right? Instead, because we are making use of an infrastructure service of being instantiated and then registered and whatnot, right? A lot of things have to happen automatically, including the instantiation of everything that you are going to be using, or all your dependencies need to also be instantiated automatically. So instead of us instantiating it like this, right, we're going to use an Autowire. So Autowire is going to instantiate service, right, and then it's going to provide a reference into this variable. It's complaining, right, because we also need to this widget service. We need to make it. So this is service. Oops. Like that. What is it complaining about? Did I miss something here? Cast first. Oh, okay. This is not long. All right, so I need to put an L, I think, next to this. Long. There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, excellent. So let's play around with this. I'm going to start the server. Restart the server. Okay. Now that it's running, right? Let's try and access this, right? So right now we were just static stuff, right? Just the course lists, right? All this is just static. But now instead of this URL being something that references a static piece of content, right? We are going to try and access dynamic data /API widgets. Do that. Notice that indeed we are receiving data that is being hosted by our server, right, in a static array. Right? Eventually, this will be going out to a database and retrieving records from a database. But for now, we are just using our simple array. And notice that we have our heading, our paragraph, our heading, and our paragraph. You see that? Right? Okay, so that's find all widgets. How about let's go a little further. What about be able to retrieve an individual widget? Okay, so let's do that. So it'll look something like this. Right? It'll be public widget. We want to retrieve a widget. Right? So find widget by ID. Right? And we're going to pass the ID of the widget. So this is the long and the ID. Okay, and who has the data? Well, the controller doesn't have that responsibility, right? It's the service who has the responsibility of managing the data. Me as a controller, my only responsibility is to make the data available on the web, right? So I'm just going to use whatever the service has. So the service has a function called find widgets by ID. I'm just going to pass the ID down, right, down to it. Right, I'm just going to return blindly whatever the service comes back. Right, I'm not pre-processing. I'm not doing anything. I need to extract this ID from somewhere. Somebody is going to have to pass it to me, presumably from a React client. Right, so let's do that. So these are widgets. And again, as a convention, right, if you don't specify an identifier, right, a unique identifier, then that means that you want the entire content, right, of that table or array or whatever. But instead, if you specify an ID, a unique identifier, right, then it means that you want that specific record. Okay, so we need to parse out from the URL. So we're going to have some ID here, right? But this ID can't be hard coded like this. It's going to be sometimes it's going to be ID number 123, 234, 446. So it needs to be a placeholder, right? Not a hard coded string, right? So we're going to put this. We'll put a curly brackets in between, saying that this is a placeholder, right? It's a parameter, right, that is embedded in the path. So it's a variable that's embedded in the path, right? So we're going to try and parse that. We're going to parse it and then provide it as a parameter to the function. And the way we do that is we can use a path variable annotation. Path variable, what it does is that it parses the path, right, looking for a specific variable, right, and then passes it along, right? So here, what's the name of the variable? It's called ID, right? This ID matches this. It doesn't match that. So actually, I'm just going to call it something else. So user, this is, I'm going to call it widget ID. How's that? There we go. So this matches that, right? This one doesn't matter, right? So this is just parsing it and then passing it along to the ID here, okay? All right, I think this one we've implemented array, right? Notice that it iterates over the array, looking for that widget by ID, and then retrieving it. All right, so let's try it out. Restarting the server. Let's see, let's refresh. Okay, we've got all the widgets. So how about retrieve this one, 345? So notice that it's the same URL. Oops. Same URL, but I am going to put at the end an ID 345, which is this one. It should return that one widget. There it is. Indeed, it retrieves that one widget. Make sense? Everybody good? Okay. All right. Okay, so there's a question in the chat. Is there any reason you're using the long object instead of the long primitive? I tend to prefer to use the these box versions of the data types, in particular because you can compare them to null, right? And check to see whether it's defined or undefined, as opposed to zero. Zero might be a valid value, right? Which is automatically initialized by the compiler. So I prefer to be able to compare it against null, which just makes the code a little prettier. All right, so one thing that we absolutely totally forgot, and that is that the widgets actually live inside of a topic. Okay, when you create a widget, you don't create a widget in a vacuum, right? You create it inside of a context. Just like when you create a module, you don't create a module on its own, you create a module within a course. Same thing when you create a lesson, you create a lesson within a module, and so on and so forth. So here, we need to be able to do the same, right? So we're going to implement this by adding to our model a somewhat kind of like a foreign key, right? Where each widget will know the parent topic, right? So we have here a private, and we're going to store here the ID of the parent topic ID, right, as a string, right? This is going to be the unique identifiers that we're getting from Mongo, right? That you are creating and deleting and updating right now in my server. Those underscore IDs for those topics, right? Those are really long unique identifiers, right? And they have letters and numbers. It's hexadecimal, right? So I'm going to represent it as a string, and we're going to store here, right, what is the parent topic ID, right? So that if we need to display certain widgets for a topic, right, we can filter by this topic ID. Okay. All right. So let's add this as a let's add this as a field. So setter and getter for the topic ID. There we go. There we go. Perfect. And we're going to add to the widget. We're going to add here the parent topic ID, like that. And we're just going to copy it here, topic ID. There we go, like that. Equal. That means that we need to update in our service. Let's see, what are we complaining about? Here we need to add some topic ID here, right? So that's a topic ID. So we'll just create some bogus topic, right? So we'll say that ABC123. So that's this heading belongs to this one topic. Yes, and then these other headings belong to some other topic, right? Belong to topic, I don't know, 2, 3, 4. So we have one topic has this widget, and we have another topic has these 3 widgets, right? So different, just like we have one module can have 3 lessons and another module can have 5 lessons. Same thing here, right? Topic ABC123 has one widget, and we have topic 234 has 3 widgets. Very good. Okay. All right. So now these create widgets. Really, the name should be create a widget for a topic, right? Again, because we're not creating widgets on their own. We're creating it within the context, right, of a parent topic. So let's refactor this. So I'm going to rename this. We'll say refactor. We call this create widget for topic. Okay. And here we'll pass in the topic ID as part of the argument. Well, I guess we could do it here, or yes, we could do it in the parent, right? How about find all widgets? Probably we don't want to find all widgets. Probably what we mean is that we want to find the widgets for a topic, right? So let's implement that. So this is find widgets for a topic, and we pass in the topic ID, right? And the way we're going to iterate, iterate over the widgets. Iterate over the widgets, and we're going to say if the topic ID equals the topic ID that we pass in as an argument, then we want that one, right? We're gonna create a subarray, right? We create a subarray of widgets, and we're gonna initialize it as empty array, as an empty array of widgets. Right, and if we find one, we're gonna add it to this. Right? We're gonna add that widget, and we're gonna return the widgets. So basically, we are filtering out all the widgets that belong to a particular topic and adding a sub array of widgets, and that's what we're gonna give you back. Right? All right, so let's try it out. So let's go back to our controller. Our controller, we have find all widgets, which is fine. Right, but now this is fine. I don't know that it would make sense to try and retrieve all the widgets across all the topics. It probably makes no sense. Just like you would you try to retrieve all the topics or all the lessons or all the modules across all courses? That probably makes no sense, right? It makes more sense that you retrieve for a specific context, right? So here you might want to implement a public retrieve a list of widgets, but not all of them. Find widgets for topic, right? And we pass you as an argument the topic ID. Okay. And where do we get that? Well, the service has a function that does that, right? It's find widgets for topic, and we pass in the topic ID. Perfect. And the way we expose it, again, this is a read operation, so it's get mapping. And same thing, all our APIs start with the token API. Okay. Now, before we were retrieving all the widgets, right? We were retrieving all the widgets, but here, right, we are retrieving the widgets within the context of some parent, right? So there's a one-to-many caller. there's a one-to-many relationship, right, between topics and widget, right? So the way the convention, the RESTful convention says is that when there is a one-to-many relationship, the URL should be that you have the parent, right? So in this case, it's topics. That's a parent. Then the specific parent for which the widgets belong to, right? So for that, it'll be some ID, right? It's a placeholder of a specific ID, right? And then the actual thing that you want. I want the widgets, right? So basically, I want the widgets, but not all of them, within the context of a specific topic. Make sense? Right? And exactly the topic ID that we're going to filter for the widgets for that particular topic, right? So we parse this out, right? We say path variable. We're going to parse out the topic ID. We parse it out, right? We map it to our local variable, and then we use it here to retrieve that specific list or subset of widgets for that particular topic, right? Let's try it out. Let's start the server. Let's run this. Okay. Right. Excellent. So if we go back, all right. So we still have the retrieve all the widgets. Notice that we now have the topic ID, right? And so again, it probably makes no sense that we want to retrieve all the widgets, right? Usually, what we might make more interesting if it's within a topics context. So let's retrieve for ABC123. Oops. ABC. Let me spell it. C. There it is. So this is the list of widgets for topic ABC123. Right? If instead we want the widgets for 234, there it is. We have these 3 widgets, right, for a different topic. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Right. So next, we need to be able to create widgets, right? Update widgets. Let's see. There's a question in the chat. Where is the Java object converted? Yeah. Yes. All the magic of converting data back and forth between JSON and JSON and Java, right? We have 2 worlds here, right? The responsibility of the controller is, right, to make all this available in web, right, for a web client. And web clients, they are usually JSON, they're JavaScript clients, written in some form of JavaScript, and they want to usually consume the data in a form that is convenient to them, which is indeed JSON. So this conversion of going from a Java array representation to an array of JSON objects, that's done for us automatically by our REST controller. The REST controller does the data mapping between the 2 different data worlds, right? The Java data world, right, and the JavaScript data world. Okay. It used to be that this data used to be formatted as XML, right? XML became very, very popular at the turn of the century. It has since lost favor, and most of the traffic, data that is being exchanged between clients and servers today, most of our libraries, most of them, what they'll do is they'll format it in JSON as opposed to XML. But yeah, it's done automatically by the get mapping and whatnot. Right. The default is JSON. You can also ask it to be formatted as XML instead. All right. So let's turn over to the client side, right? So we made headway in generating some data, making available. So let's head over to the React.js part of this. We want to be able to hit this, right? We want to be able to communicate with this, right? Retrieve data. So let's do that. All right, so we have that in a separate project, right? There's our React project. There it is. Okay, and so what we're going to try and do is create a widget list component that can retrieve all that data and render it here. So let's try doing that first. Okay, so let's see. So we'll create here under a directory the course editor, and under here we'll create the let's see, a widget list, or maybe widgets, just widgets, maybe. Let's just call it widgets. And in here, let's create a JavaScript, and this will be our widget list. Okay. All right, so let's create a simple component here. This will be import, right, React from React, right? Nothing new, right? So we'll do const widget list. Okay, and we're going to return. So for now, we'll just do h1 widget list. Okay, so let's see if we can at least render this. Right, so we're going to export default widget list. Perfect. And we're going to map it. So let's see. When we click on the topic, right? Although I don't believe I have a topic. I don't have a topic. So right, because I believe we went all the way down to the lessons. We never did the topics, right? So I'm going to try and fake this, right? Because you have topics, you've implemented it, but I haven't. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, in the, let's see, course manager, we have the course grid, the table, very good. We have maybe an app.js. What do we have here? We have a route for the course editor, very good, okay. And in the course editor, we have, okay, we have modules, we have lesson tabs. We never implemented the topics, right? So I'm going to skip over that. I'm going to include here what? I'm going to include the widget list here. Okay. All right, so if we run this, let's see. And we go to course table, right? And right, and we select a particular course. There's our widget list down below. See that? There's a widget list. So we want to be able to retrieve the widgets, right? So right now we don't have topics. That's fine. We know that we have a one that retrieves all the widgets, don't we? Right. So we could at least try to render that. Okay. So let's try and do that. Let's go to the widget list. Where'd it go? Oh. All right, so in our widget list, we want to be able to retrieve all the widgets. So where do we do that? Well, we need a reducer to do all that, right? And but for now, right, let's keep it simple, right? We'll put the reducers a little later, right? But for now, we want to load up some widgets. What we want to be able to see is can we hit the server and get some data so that we can render something here, okay? So for instance, we can get started by maybe creating a temporary array of widgets here, right? We can say const, right? We can say widgets with jets, right? And set widgets. And here we're going to use a use state for now. This will be maybe use state, and initially will be some empty array. Okay. When do we load up all those widgets? When we load up, when we instantiate the widget, when we first load, right? And we can get a hold of that event handler, right? When using the use effect, right? Use effect. We're gonna get a call here. Use effects is gonna tell us, you're instantiated, right? It's time for you to initialize yourself, right? And so this is a perfect time to go fetch all my widgets. And my widgets live where? My widgets live at, let's see. Well, let's see if we can retrieve these three. Right? Let's grab that URL. Let's grab that URL. And here's where we would do something like fetch, right? The URL, there it is. We would do a response comes back from the servers, right, from the server, response. We're gonna parse it, response.json. Obviously, this you wouldn't do actually here. You would do it where you would have a separate widget service, obviously, right? You would not do it here, right? So then this comes back with the actual widgets, right? With the actual widgets, which we can set. We can set the widgets here. We can say set widgets and pass the widgets that came back from the server. Yes, makes sense. If we have widgets, we can just render them here. No, we can render them maybe as a UL, right? And then we can iterate over them, something like widgets.map, right? And we have the widget object, right? And then render them as a line item, right? Line item with a key of widget.id, right? And render the type, right? We can render the widgets.type. Okay. All right, so let's see what we got. See if we broke something. Okay, so something's didn't quite work. Let's see, let's try and refresh this. Let's try and inspect it and debug it. Okay, notice that we're getting some errors. Let's look at the console. Okay, module list, lesson. Okay, notice that it's saying you tried to go to API topics ABCD, ABC 234 widgets from localhost 3000. And yes, we are a localhost 3000. And you tried to access localhost 8080, and that's a no-no, right? That's considered to be a security breach, right? The browser enforces what it is disallowing cross-origin, right? That a script that was downloaded from one domain, right, is not allowed to communicate with another domain. Okay, this is called cross-origin scripting, right? And it's a security threat, right? That if you allow a script that is downloaded from another domain, right, that is dangerous, right? Only scripts that are downloaded from a domain are only allowed to talk back to the domain where they came from. Okay, if they want to talk to some other domain, what the browser does, the browser asks that other domain and says, hey, is it okay if this script that was downloaded from over there talks to you? And the server needs to be able to respond yes or no, right? Am I going to allow this to go through, right? And right now the browser is stopping me, right? It says, okay, you're trying to communicate, but the server hasn't told me whether it's okay or not, right? So we need to go back to the server, and tell our controller to allow this communication, right? Remember, everything that has to do with HTTP communication, right, is in the controller, right? The controller handles the URLs, controller handles everything that has to do with the path, right? Anything that's coming from in the body, any data that we want to be sending, like if we fill out a form. Another thing is that handles is cross-origin security configuration, right? And the way we configure that is by using this cross-origin annotation. We can configure what is it that we're going to allow, right? Where are we allowing this to come from, right? And we do that by this origins. See that origins? So we say origins, and this is an array, right, of URLs and domains where we are accepting incoming requests. Okay, we're going to be very, very generous, and we're going to say, you know what, I don't care from where, right? It can come from anywhere in the world. All domains are welcome. Okay, we don't discriminate. All right, so let's restart the server. Let's restart the server. Okay, let's go back. Let's refresh, and let's see. So this time it didn't complain about that. And indeed we have, there we have it. See that? We got widget paragraphs, headings, paragraphs. See that? These are the 3 widgets that we got from the server, right? Which is exactly what we wanted to do. Perfect, excellent. Let's go a little further. Maybe we should display this as a list group maybe. And this, maybe we can make them a little prettier. This would be class list group item. Hello, list. There we go. Okay, so it's rendering a little better, a little prettier. There we go. Okay. All right, so what we could do here, right, is that instead of doing the rendering here, right, what we could do is instead under our under widgets, right, we could create different widgets, right, and that would render differently depending on what we have. Right? So, for instance, we could have a heading, right, a heading widget, right, that renders as follows, right? We have import, React from React, that we have a const heading widget, right, that renders maybe as a div here, and this says, H2 heading widget, okay, and we can export this, export default heading widget. Maybe even take as argument the widget object, right? And maybe we can display here the ID of the widget, perhaps, okay, and the type, maybe, well, just the ID for now. And we can have maybe the paragraph widgets. It can look something similar, right? So the paragraph widget. Right, the paragraph widget will look a slightly different. Oops. Oh. Wait, let's rename this. This would be paragraph widget. So paragraph widget. There we go. Refactor. And this is widget, and this is paragraph widget. So paragraph, like that. And then what we could do is in the list, we can use this type to decide, what we want to render. We could say, if the widget type is equal to heading widget, then we're going to render the heading widget, right? And we're going to pass the widget as a parameter to the widget object as we're iterating over it, right? Or, right, if the type instead is paragraph, right, we can then render here the paragraph widget. Okay, there it is. So now we have all three, right? Where we're either rendering a paragraph widget or heading widget, right? Depending on the type, we display one or the other. You see that? Okay. So the next thing that we need to do is well, we need to be able to toggle between the widgets that belong to one topic or belong to another topic. Okay. So to try to simulate this, because I don't have any topics, right? I know I have some hard-coded topics in the server. I think I called one ABC123, and the other one I called it ABC234. Right? I'm going to simulate that so I can navigate between the two, right? And either retrieve the widgets from one topic or retrieve the widgets from another topic, right? In your case, you are going to have actual topics, right? You're actually going to have an ID for a real topic, and you're going to use that instead, obviously, right? Instead, I don't have that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I know the URLs to retrieve these. The URLs are, this is the URL right here, right? Those are the URLs, okay, with the topic ID. That's the topic ID, okay, right? So what we're going to do is in our course editor, okay, I'm going to fake this, and I'm going to create a temporary topic pills, right, with some hard-coded topics in there, okay. Just so that I can illustrate for you this, right? So I'm going to create here. a temporary topic pills, right? Which is going to be import React from React, and we're going to const. We're going to say topic pills. And I'm just going to create a couple hyperlinks here, right? So UL, class, nav, pills, I think it is, right? And we're going to have a line item, class, nav, item, right? And then a couple hyperlinks under here. Okay, so we're going to have a link to, and we don't know yet. We don't know yet. Let's load this. Let's see. Link is from where? Import link from React Router DOM. Yep. And this will be the topic ABC123. And let's create another one. Will be topic ABC234. Okay. And let's export this. So export default topic pills. And in the course editor, we're just going to bring that right here. Right, so this would be topic pills. Let's see how that renders. Okay, we have the topic pills here. See that? Right now, they're not linking to anything, right? And what should they do? They should just add. They should add, right? If I go down a particular module, a particular lesson, right? And if I click on this, basically what's going to do, it's going to append. It's going to append topics slash, right? Topics slash and the ID of the topic. Yes. So let's see, how can we append? So we can append by saying here, basically saying topics slash and then ABC123. Notice that I did not put a slash in front of this. See that? That means that it's not an absolute path, right? It's just appends to whatever is already there. Okay. So this would be ABC 234. Okay, let's see if that works. Let's see if that works. So let's click on this one. Okay, there it is. See that it added here? So there's lessons 1, 2, 3. And when I click on it, oh, it's not adding, it's not appending the ID. That's interesting. How come it's cutting off the ID of the lessons? That's weird. All right, that's fine. We can fix that. We can fix that. We should also have from. We can use what is it? Use params from React Router DOM, right? And we can get a hold of the parameters, right? All those, right? The course ID, the module ID, the lesson. We should be able to grab all that, right? And recreate that URL. Okay, so let's do that. So that's going to first we're gonna put this in an explicit return. It's going to be a return, right? And this whole thing we need to put it inside of a curly bracket. There we go. There we go. Okay. So now we can retrieve the parameters. Let's see, const, and we're going to retrieve the course ID we should have in there, right? From the use params. Use params. And let's render it just in case, just to make sure we have it, right? Let's render it course ID, see if we have it. Yes, we do. There it is. We have the course ID. Do we have the module ID? We have the module ID. We add the module ID. Oh, these are all fake IDs. That's why probably. Do we have lesson ID? Yeah, we got lesson ID. We got everything. All right, so we got everything, right? We can recreate this. So I was missing the lesson ID, so I'm just going to prepend the lesson ID, see if I can get away with that. I'm going to make that, and then a curly bracket, right? And let's see if I can just append here the lesson ID. Okay, let's see if I click on here. There we go. All right, so we just appended the topic ID. See that? Let's go back and let's do the same thing with this one. Right, and the ID here is 234. Okay, all right, so good. We also need to grab the topic ID from the route over there, right? So we need the topic ID, and notice that it's navigating to some weird place because we don't have that route. We don't have that route. We need to add that route to our router, right? So let's go out to our router. Where would that be? I think it's in app.js. Yeah, let's go to app.js. Yeah, we just need to add. The route, right? Topics, and then the topic ID, colon topic ID, so that we can parse that out from the URL, right? So we can parse it out. Right, so we have the topic ID. We also need to be able to render the pills, right? Because the widgets that are rendered underneath, right? So that we can extract it. So for instance, we can do that in the widget list. We should be able to extract right now the topic ID as well, right? So let's do that. Let's grab from the params, same params, right? But in the widget list, now we should be able to grab the topic ID so that we can make this dynamic. See that? Instead of making this hard-coded as ABC234, we're going to be able to parse that from the route, right? So let's do that. We'll do const and try to extract the topic ID from the use params. Okay. Let's see if this works. Let's see. We should be able to just do. This should be a string. This should be a that, and this should be $ topic ID. Also, we're gonna make sure that we don't want to enter in an endless loop, right? So that only when the topic ID changes do we want to run this. Otherwise, we're gonna end up, hitting the server every time, right? We don't want to do that. All right, so let's see if we broke this whole thing. Okay, so if we click here, let's see, do we topics? Ooh, oh, something's wrong there. Topics, lesson. No, wait, what's going on here? Okay, we are looking at a lesson. We're looking at a lesson, and when we click on topic, there we go. Topic 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay, so that worked, right? That worked. Okay, but our append is not working because it keeps appending, right? Yeah, so that's not going to work. All right, so we'll need to do a better solution with that. All right, so let's try and fix that. So this is the URL. That's the URL for the topic pills. Let's fix that. So let's not use this strategy here. All right, so this strategy will be, we need to generate something like this, right? So courses, right? Courses. This is the layout, I guess, right? I'm guessing that we have a layout here. Layout. I'm going to parse. I'm going to put in here. Layout. This is the course ID, right? This is the course ID. I was hoping not to have to do this, but I guess this is the module ID. Module ID. This is the lesson ID. And this is going to be what's this? This is the, okay, 1, 2, 3, and the other one is going to be almost identical, but it's going to be 2, 3, 4. Now for you, this would be dynamic, right? Because you would be hitting your server, well, my server, with the topics, and you would be iterating and generating all these topics. So this would be topic underscore ID, right? I'm hard coding it, but for you, it would be an actual ID that you got from the server. Okay. All right. So let's try it again. Now we need to go back. Is it? Oh, we need to put slash in front of this to make it absolute. There we have it. See that? We click on one, we got the widgets for one topic. We click on the other, and we have widgets for the other topic. See that? There we go. Excellent. Right, we got both. All right, everybody okay? Does this make sense? Everybody still with me? Right. Okay, so let's go a little further. And what about being able to delete a widget or create a brand new widget? Right? So how do we do that? Right, so let's do first creating new widgets. Okay. So how would we do that? So first of all, on the server side, right, we need to be able to respond to an incoming post, right, that has an object that represents that widget that we want to add, right? And it'll be a widget for within a particular topic that we want to create, right? So how do we do that? So in widget list, right, we would have maybe a plus sign, right? Maybe we can add a plus sign over here. We can say icon class, right? FAS a plus, right? And we can maybe send it all the way to the right. So we're going to pull or float to the right. Let's see what that does. Okay, there's a plus sign there. Maybe we can make it a little bigger. Okay, there it is. And when we click it, we want to add it to the server, right? So how do we do that? So we should have an on-click. Obviously, notice that I'm not using Redux here, right? You're responsible for making sure that this is used as a reducer. I'm not using a reducer, okay? Right, so I'll leave that up to you, okay? I'm just showing you how you would communicate with the server, right, using fetch. This also should not be here, right? This should be in the widget service, not in here, right? In the separate widget service. But right, I'm just showing you how you would communicate with the server. All right, so say I want to add a new, right? So I would have here something like create widget. Okay, so const. And I want to invoke it from when I clicked on this plus. So it would be, on click, create widget. Okay. And what we would do a post. We would post to a server, and it would be something like this, right? It would be the same fetch. Let's see. It would be topics for the topic, right? For the topic. And so we're creating a widget for a topic. It would be a post, right? It would be a post. So it would be, the type would be, the method would be post. The body, in the body, we are going to send a hard-coded JSON stringify. We'll send an object, and in that object, we won't send an ID, right? Because the server is going to do an ID for us, but it'll need a type. So the initial type, the default type will be heading. Maybe an initial size of 2. Okay, so this will be size 2. It'll have an initial text. It will be text. Will be a new widget. Right, just let's go with that. Just with those those couple things, and we're going to post it, and we'll need the that the headers will be content type will be application/JSON. Okay, so it's going to come back, and the actual, presumably we're going to add it, right? And this is the actual widget that is coming back from the server. And so I'm going to update my widgets locally to contain the old widgets plus this new widget, right? So to do that, the proper thing to do here is to take the old state, right? The old state, so widgets. And we are going to return a new array that's going to contain the old widgets, comma, the new widgets, right? The new widget. So it's going to be appended at the end, right? And then hopefully also on the server, right? Now this is going to fail. This is going to fail because the server hasn't been configured to accept a post. Okay, let's look at the failure. Look at the failure. Let's refresh. And let's see here. Let's clear this out. I'm going to say post. Okay, notice that it's complaining, saying that it's complaining. Let's look at the complaint here. Let's go to the network. There it is. See course error. See that? Notice that there are 2 queries that went out. Right. The first query said that this is the browser asking the server, hey, what are my options? Are you accepting post? And the server responds saying, where is it? Okay, it's not responding. It's saying no, I don't accept anything, right? And that's why the browser fails this, saying that there's a course error. Okay, so we need to go back to the server, to our server here, and accept a post. We're going to accept a post. We're going to accept a post. I'm going to say that we want to basically call our widget service here. We want to call our widget service and do this create widget for topic. See that? We want to call this function, right? So we want to allow folks to call, right? Create widget for service, for create widget for topic. And we're going to pass in the ID of the topic, which is going to be a string, topic ID. And we're also going to accept that you're going to pass us an actual widget object, right? And what we're going to do is that we're going to make sure that the widget knows who their parent topic is. So we're going to set the topic, right, to topic ID, making sure that the widget knows that it's parent. And then we're going to call the service, right, create widget for topic, which accepts as argument, accepts just a widget. So we're going to say create widget. And what it's going to do is it's just going to add it to the array, right? Notice that it just adds it to the array, right? And then it just returns the widget with a new ID. Okay. So once we add it to the array, we're done. We've stored it in a permanent storage, well, our array, and we just want to return this new widget that was created with its ID. Okay. All right. So now to make this available to the server, to the client, to the React client, the React client is going to send me as a post, right? So instead of a get, I'm going to listen for an incoming post, right? And the URL according to the convention, right, it's going to start with an API. And because this is a relationship between a parent and a child, right, we first start with the parent topics, then the actual parent, who's the parent, the ID of the topic, okay, and then the actual thing that we're creating. We're creating a widget, right? So widgets, right? And that's actually where we are sending the post, right? Notice that we are sending the post exactly to API topics, right? And widgets. See that? That's exactly where we're sending it. So perfect. All right. So the topic ID, we need to parse it out from the path, right? We know how to do that already, right? So that's path variable. And the topic ID, we're going to parse it here. But the object, the client is sending me an entire object, right? It's sending me a whole object, right, in the body. So I need to be able to retrieve and parse from the body this JSON data, right, and map it to my widget. Okay. Well, there's an annotation that does that as well. From the request, we want to parse the body, right, and then map it to this widget object. It's going to try and map all the fields, right? It's going to try and map the type to the type in the widget. The widget has a type, right? We'll try pass the type. This should be a number, an integer for the size, right? And then the string for the text. So it's going to try and map it like that, right? So how do we do that? Right? We do that with request body. There it is. See, request body. Request body will parse the JSON object, right, and try to instantiate a Java version of the object, okay, which we are just going to pass along to the CreateWidget topic, which is just going to store it in the array, and then return the new array, the new object. All right, let's try it out. See if this explodes. Let's restart. Okay, so let's try this out again. Let's refresh. Okay, so let's clear this out. And so let's put the plus sign again. Okay, notice that this time around it did not die. All right, it indeed created this heading widget at the bottom. See that with an ID. Notice that this ID was generated by the server. The server generated this ID. We didn't generate it on the client, right? Notice that if I refresh, notice that the heading widget is permanently there, right? The server remembers that this widget belongs to this particular topic. Right? If I go to the other topic, notice that it only has one widget. I can create a widget for this. Now there are two widgets for this topic and 4 widgets for this topic. See that? And I can navigate and I can get individual list of widgets for each one of the topics. See that? Okay. All right. Yeah, so we've demonstrated that we can create a RESTful API, right, on the server that allows me to, retrieve data, create brand new data, new widgets, new paragraphs, right? And then also we've demonstrated how we can integrate with it using a React client, right? This React client. Obviously, we took a couple of shortcuts here, right? And in particular, we're not using a widget service, right? This should all live in a widget service, right? Not in here. Also, the other shortcut that we took is that we're not using a reducer, right? We're doing everything inside of widget list, right? And again, that's a no-no as well, right? The assignment asks you to explicitly use a reducer, right? Maintain the state not inside of the React component, but instead as part of a reducer. All right. Let's see, is there a question in the chat? Whenever you click on topic, it's a little jumpy as the widgets load. Is there any way to fix that? It's a little jumpy. What do you mean? No jump. Well, very clean. Maybe the very first time when it loaded the component at the very first time, but then once it's cached, once the DOM is cached in memory, you should not see any bumpiness. Okay. All right, that's all I had for you today. We're going to be playing around a little bit more when we come back next time, and we will add, delete and whatnot, all that kind of stuff a little later. Let's see, there's a question here. So when is the exam one due? It is currently listed as today. No, I'll change it. It's listed. It's due on Monday. Yeah, let me change that. Yeah, Monday at midnight. Thank you.
Professor, do you have a little bit of hour later because the server is down at this morning. I can't do anything debugging this morning.
Yeah. After class tonight at 9, you can ping me, and if you or if you can come to the class tonight,
Yes,
I can stay later.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Hi, Professor.
Yes.
Sorry, I have a quick question about what part of the code?
Okay.
Can you go to the course editor and I think there was a warning underneath the dependencies array that I also was getting.
In the console?
The course editor for the React.
Yeah, we're in the course editor.
Yeah, the dependencies array, I think it said you were missing a dependency, and that was also a warning I was getting.
Where is that?
Oh, sorry, in the use effect.
Here?
I don't see what you see, so.
Oh, I'm not sharing. I'm sorry. Okay, where?
In the actual IDE.
Oh, IDE.
The use effect, the second parameter, the little array with topics ID.
Here?
Oh yeah, when you were writing it said it gave a little warning, and I had been getting that warning too, but I guess it's gone now, which is weird.
So maybe when I had this like that?
Sorry, I'm unsure now that it's not there.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you send me a screenshot? Can you share?
Yeah, one moment, please.
You sharing?
I'm opening up my editor. Can you see what I see?
Yes. Oh, I see. React hook effect, use effect has a missing dependency, find topics or lessons. Either included or remove the dependency array. If find topics or lesson changes too often, find the parent component that defines it and wrap the definition in use callback. Find topics for lesson ID. Find topics for lesson. All right, can you exit out of that? Find topics for lesson. What are you doing there? You're doing if lesson ID yada 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 is undefined yada yada yada. Find topics for lesson. Lesson ID. I don't know.
It still works for me. It's just that I wanted to try to fix it if I could.
Yeah, can you comment out line 17 and line 19? Still, huh? Okay, can you, oh, okay, so this one goes out to, oh, but you did declare it there. All right, can you copy find topics for lesson? Copy it? No, just a function. Yeah, double click and just copy the name of the function. Can you copy that?
It's copied.
Okay, now put it in the array right after lesson ID. Okay. So it wants that as a dependency. Interesting. Yeah, it thinks it's a variable. Basically what it wants you to do is make sure that you don't end up in an infinite loop. And that's why we use lesson ID in there. We put lesson ID as a dependency.
Yeah, and I guess topic, this should be established.
Yeah, and it can't
here somewhere. So
right.
It's not going to change, but I guess it wants it here just in case.
Yeah, it just wants it there, but you don't really need it. If it were changing, then yes, but it's not. Because we know lesson ID will change, right? But we know find topic for lesson. I think it's an overzealous IDE trying to parse out and warn you if that variable changes, but we know it doesn't change.
Yeah, I guess it's just being extra safe.
Yeah.
All right, and use effect is called once the DOM fully loads. It does what's in here and then it updates the DOM based on what's changed by this.
Exactly, yep.
All right, thank you very much, Professor.
All right, good luck, bye-bye.